and welcome to Walking London. For today's walk we are going to be exploring the City of London. Not to be confused with London, the City of London is actually a city and a county within the City of London itself, and as you can hear it is super noisy. So for this walk we are starting here at the Bank Station area and we're going to be ending up at Tower Hill. This walk should take you about 2 to 2.5 hours, and it depends on how fast you walk obviously, but also whether you incorporate the extras that I've hidden in at the same time. So let's get started. So as I said, you're going to start your walk over at Bank Underground Station and then walk across the road here to the Duke of Wellington statue. Now this area of London has traditionally been the centre of wealth and power. You can still see that today because over here we have the Bank of England, behind me you have the Royal Exchange building, and in front of me there is Mansion House, which is the traditional residence for the Lord Mayor of London. So on the corner here we have the Duke of Wellington statue. The Duke of Wellington was also known as the Iron Duke, and he defeated Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. The bronze that was used to actually make this sculpture was melted down cannons that he captured from the French during the battle. They were melted down and cast into the likeness of the Duke on a horse. The Duke is the only person to have 2 equestrian statues dedicated to him in the City of London, the other one being at Hyde Park Corner. Here we have the London Troops Memorial. This memorial is dedicated to the men who died during the First World War. The original design by Sir Aston Webb included some 75-foot masts, but the design was rejected, and so this is the design that you now see today. Over here we have a kind of overlooked statue to James Henry Greathead, who was a South African-born engineer. He designed the Greathead tunnelling shield, which was used in the Tower subway under the Thames in 1869, and also to build the railway, which now we know as the Northern Line. And if that wasn't enough for our very first stop on this walk, underneath this pavement here was the world's very first public lavatory. Okay, so not really impressing you, and clearly not impressing you, Nadia, my camera woman. But it was opened in 1855 and it cost a penny to go into, which is where the term spend a penny originated. Lastly, we have the Royal Exchange building, which was the centre of commerce for many, many years, and then occupied by Lloyd's Insurance for 150 years. It's now a shopping centre and has some offices inside, but it is worth a little look because inside is a really great cafe called the Grand Cafe, which might be a good spot for breakfast. And also inside there are murals painted by prominent artists in the time from 1892. Leaving the Royal Exchange building, you're then going to walk down Cornhill. Cornhill is the highest point in the City of London and was once the site of a massive basilica, which basically means big important church. This was part of the Roman Empire, and this is also when it was called Londinium. As you're walking down Cornhill, make sure you make a stop at number 32. As you can see, it has a door with lots of wood panelling with carvings inside, and these carvings represent different historical events that happened around London. Back in 1848, number 32 was actually number 65 and the home to publishers Smith and Elder. It was an interesting event in 1848 when 2 of their authors came to visit quite unexpectedly, and they thought it was Acton and Cura Bell. Turns out instead of these Bell brothers, they were in fact sisters, Charlotte and Anne Bronte. You're then going to head along Finch Street and up Threadneedle Street to this rather unassuming blue door. This is the Merchant Taylors' Hall, and the Merchant Taylors' Hall has been on this road since 1347. One of the most important members for this Merchant Taylors' Hall was Sir Christopher Wren. Now remember that name because that name is going to come up again a fair few times on this walk. So the reason I find this particular place fascinating is because this is where the British National Anthem was sung for the very first time in 1607. No one knows who actually wrote the lyrics or the music, but that means that this is essentially where the British National Anthem began. Before we get to Leadenhall Market, we're going to make a stop very briefly here at 8 Bishopsgate, which I know isn't very pretty, but just hear me out. 8 Bishopsgate is the site of London's earliest merchant bank, Baring Brothers and Company, which was opened in 1762. This bank funded the Napoleonic Wars and the Louisiana Purchase. But it also had its share of difficulties too. In 1890, Edmund Baring, one of the Baring heirs, he actually lost a heck of a lot of money, like millions, by doing a risky venture to Argentina. It was an important bank though, so the Bank of England stepped in and helped them out of financial ruin. However, if that wasn't bad enough, I would hate to have been a young accounts clerk out of their Singapore office who in 1995 lost over £800 million on the Japanese futures market. It sent the bank into absolute financial collapse, and that was the end of the Baring Brothers and Company Bank. Oops. You've now made it to Leadenhall Market. This is a cross-shaped lead-roofed house that belonged to the Neville family in the 14th century. There are lots of cobbled streets and alleys, and it's full of shops and pubs these days. A short walk through Leadenhall Market will bring you to Bull's Head Passage. This little alleyway here was in fact used in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone as Diagon Alley, but with a little bit of set design and film magic. I can't see it myself, I might have to go back and watch that clip again.
And may bring, if they desire, either an owl, a cat or a toad. Can we find all this in London?
If you know where to go.
Once you've come through Leadenhall Market, you will probably notice this giant silver, steel and glass monstrosity. This is Lloyd's of London, and it was quite a controversial building. It was particularly controversial when it was built because it completely ignores all of the traditional architecture that surrounds it. Lloyd's of London is home to a really interesting piece of history, the Lutein Bell. We actually just snuck up inside and asked the security guard if we could have a little bit of a look at the bell itself, but we weren't allowed to film anything, so sorry, I can't put those clips in. But the Lutein Bell was on a ship called La Lutine, a French ship that sunk off the Dutch coast in 1799. The ship was carrying silver and gold bullion, which was insured at Lloyd's for over £1 million. £1 million back in those days was a heck of a lot of money. In 1859, they actually salvaged the bell that was on the La Lutine and they brought it to Lloyd's of London, and it was rung as a way to let people know when overdue ships were due in, because that was quite a risky venture to insure ships. 2 strokes of the bell was a good thing. It meant that the ship had come in and then everyone could breathe a sigh of relief. But 1 meant bad news. The Lutein Bell doesn't need to be used in this way anymore. After all, we have lots of technological advancements that mean we don't need that. But it is used on certain occasions, such as ceremonial occasions, Her Majesty's birthday being an example, but also in times of very difficult disasters, such as the terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers in 2001. So now what we're going to do is take a trip down Lime Street to our next location on Fenchurch Street. Heading down Wood Lane, you come to 20 Fenchurch Street, or the famous walkie-talkie building. Now this is the 12th tallest building in London, and it cost over £200 million to build. Not very interesting facts maybe, but the Sky Garden at the top is incredibly worth it. I highly recommend, and it's free, which is amazing, but you do need to book in advance. They release tickets up to 2 weeks in advance, and if you don't get them, bit of a tough luck. Although apparently you can turn up here before 10 AM and you might be able to get in without the ticket. Or after 6 PM you can go to the bar up in the Sky Garden, but you have to be dressed smart casual, which I'm not, so I guess we'll continue on our walk. Dipping down Wood Lane, you come out at St Margaret Patten's Church. Patten's, out of interest, is a type of shoe that was produced in the lanes around here a very long time ago indeed. This building burnt down in the Great Fire of London in 1666 and was rebuilt by Sir Christopher Wren. You are definitely going to hear this name coming up quite a lot. When the church was rebuilt, Wren actually used to attend services here, and in one of the canopied pews in the ceiling is carved CW 1686. His initials, and the fact that he used to sit in that very spot when he attended service. If you started your walk around 11 or 12, you're probably feeling a little bit peckish by now, or you might want a big lunch. So 2 restaurants that I would suggest are over by Monument. The first is The Hydrant, and it's an American diner style place. I love booths, so I really like the booths in this place, and I particularly recommend the pulled pork burger or the halloumi burger. If you're looking for something that's not American food, then why not try the Folly? Just because the restaurant is so beautiful. Inside is absolutely stunning, and the food itself is great. I haven't had any mains there, but basically I took a bunch of starters and just ate those instead, and they're all really interesting and all very yummy. Our next stop is right here at Monument. It is in fact the monument to the Great Fire of London. This monument is 202 feet high and has 311 steps in a spiral staircase to the top. It was built by Sir Christopher Wren, and his friend Robert Hooke. Christopher Wren originally wanted to place a statue to King Charles II, who was on the throne at the time, at the very top in gold. However, King Charles II declined, saying very politely, "I didn't start the fire." If you can make it all the way up the steps to the very top, then you will find an amazing viewing platform over London. It's a really great view up there, and much cheaper than the London Eye at only £4.50 for an adult at the time of filming this video. The monument, being the monument to the Great Fire of London, is in a location where it basically started. So just here at Pudding Lane in a baker's shop, a fire began on the 2nd of September 1666. It raged for 5 days and consumed a lot of the city of London, in fact about 4/5 of it. There were about 80,000 people here living at the time, and about 70,000 of those were made homeless. Now you could go straight from Monument to London Bridge, we can see just over here. However, I would suggest making a little stop first at St Magnus the Martyr. Now this has been a site of a church since 1067. This was the second church that was burnt down in the Great Fire itself. The old stone London Bridge used to run beside St Magnus over here. However, in the 18th century they decided to widen the bridge, therefore they needed to put the path directly underneath the tower itself. But what's really cool about coming here is that you can see remnants of the old London Bridge. So this stone right here is in fact part of the old stone of Old London Bridge, which I think is really cool. But maybe even cooler, depends on how you figure age, is when you come back here under the tower, where they put the pavement to run underneath it. And just over here is this. This is a piece of wooden post from the Roman wharf of London Bridge. So before the stone bridge, there was the wooden one. So this piece of wood here is from the 1st century. It's over 2,000 years old. So along the road and up some dark and dingy steps, you will finally come to London Bridge. London Bridge is my personal favourite bridge. Now, that might be a little bit confusing because one, you might have thought that London Bridge was Tower Bridge, which is in fact over there, and two, this looks like a very boring bridge, but historically it's absolutely fascinating. I couldn't possibly cover everything in this video because that would make this video a very long video indeed. So why not have a gander at my London Bridge video where I will explain all for you, and trust me, it's interesting. I'll put the link to it in the description below, or wait till the end of the walk video and you can click on the end card. You're now going to take a walk along the bank of the Thames, and one of the buildings you will pass is Adelaide House, which is just behind me. Adelaide House was named for Queen Adelaide, wife of King William IV. One of the interesting things about this building is its Art Deco design, and especially its Egyptian influences. And that's because this building was built around the time of the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, which is actually incredibly unpopular with the British people of the time. Walking along the riverside, you might want to make a stop and sit at one of the many benches that are available and enjoy the view of the Shard London Bridge, however attractive or not that you find it, and Hayes Gallery, which you can see across the ways. Or you might want to take a stop at the next place, which is just here. This building has a yellow French Renaissance facade and was built in 1877, and it's the old Billingsgate Fish Market. The fish market itself moved to the Isle of Dogs in 1982. Yes, Isle of Dogs is a real place in London, but you can obviously still see the building here, and there's a bit of an ode to it being a fish market because 2 weather vanes are on either end with a fish on top. Fun fact, George Orwell used to work here in the 1930s. So now we're going to leave the Thames Walk past Custom House, just over here. Custom House was built in 1275 and is in fact where Geoffrey Chaucer worked between 1379 and 1385. Geoffrey Chaucer, of course, the famous author of the Canterbury Tales. So we're going to head just up here and across the road. You should now find yourself at St Dunstan in the east. This is a really cool area, and this church was actually built in 1100. It was damaged quite severely during the Great Fire of London, and rather than be completely rebuilt, it was just sort of patched over, but a tower and steeple were added by Sir Christopher Wren. The tower and the steeple is mostly what remains of St Dunstan, including some of the walls around us, and that's because of the Blitz in 1941. At that time, the Anglican Church decided not to rebuild it, and they sort of just left it derelict and unloved until 1967, when the City of London stepped in and turned it into this public park. It's now a very popular place with tourists who happen to stumble across it, locals who like to get away from the noise and bubble from outside of London and have a bit of peace and quiet, and especially photographers. In fact, I had a photography shoot here not that long ago. Once you've had a little bit of a walk around, nip down Cross Lane and across Lower Thames Street to All Hallows by the Tower, which is one of our last stops on this walk. This church was built in 675 AD and is the oldest surviving church in London. The reason it has survived and missed the devastation of the Great Fire of London was because of Admiral William Penn. William Penn worked with the Navy, and because of that, he managed to get the naval officers to come over and blow up those nearby houses, and that caused a fire break, and it saved the church.
Inside, there is a 7th century Saxon arch which uses recycled Roman tiles. And if you want to see something even more Roman, take a trip down into the medieval Undercroft, where you can actually walk on a well-preserved Roman pavement from the 2nd century. The Undercroft is an amazing museum where you can find all kinds of treasures, including the marriage certificate of John Quincy Adams and Louise Catherine Johnson. Adams later became the 6th President of the United States. The altar at the end of the chapel is made from stones from the Templar Church of Athlete in Israel, which were removed during the Crusades.
All Hallows by the Tower is an amazing church and museum, and I would definitely recommend even just picking this out of the tour to do for yourself. It's also a kid-friendly thing to do. If you've got kids, bring them along because they have activity sheets inside so that they can go on a bit of an adventure hunt and discover all the treasures that are inside. You can also do it probably as an adult as well. And also definitely engage the staff in a bit of chit-chat as well. They are an amazing wealth of knowledge. I got started talking with one of these guys the other day. Couldn't make her stop talking. It was so interesting and she knew so much, not just about the church, but of London just generally. So we're officially at the end of our walking tour of the east side of the City of London. I hope you enjoyed it. If you went on the actual walk itself, do let me know, I'd love to hear it. But if you still have a little bit of energy left and you are still craving some history, funnily enough, the Tower of London is right behind us. I would go in there and tell you a little bit about it, but that would take about 15 videos probably to make it happen. So if you would like to see me talk about the Tower of London and give you a little bit more information about it, do let me know. Maybe I can make that happen for you. So this is the first video in my Walking London series, and if you enjoyed it, it'll be really handy to know, so just leave me a little comment or hit that like button. It's much easier for you, I suppose. I would like to give a little shout out to my friend Nadia, who is currently filming, hey! And she has a YouTube channel as well, so I will leave that in the description for you to check out. She does some really awesome stuff over there. That's all from the Tower of London, the City of London, and from me. And I will hopefully see you in the next video. Bye!